A lot of people think that bipolar depression is just the crash that happens after a manic episode. So, if you treat the mania, the depression should go away too. But that's not how bipolar disorder works. We usually have a lot more episodes of depression than mania, and our episodes are not like a seesaw where you always have an up and then a down. Sometimes we have one depression episode after another, and the depression side of bipolar disorder is much harder to treat. I've spent a large part of my life struggling with depression. That's why I want to talk about it. I'm Patty, the girl with blue energy. I have bipolar disorder, and I make videos about mental health and personal growth. Bipolar depression feels different for everyone. We don't always feel sad. Sometimes we feel physically exhausted or have physical pain. I have often described bipolar disorder as an energy disorder. So when we're depressed, we may feel like we have no energy. We may feel tired all the time or like we can't get enough sleep. We might feel slowed down, or we might have trouble concentrating or thinking, or we might not feel anything at all. We can feel detached, disconnected, or disassociated. This is why many of us shut down when we're depressed or ghost our family and loved ones. We can also have mixed episodes, which sort of feels like being manic and depressed at the same time. So this can make us agitated or irritable along with feeling depressed. And if our mania or hypomania isn't under control, we can experience what many of us call the crash. The crash is a sudden and intense change in mood from mania or hypomania into depression. One thing that is different with bipolar depression is that we can be feeling okay and then suddenly fall into this deep depressive episode. Sometimes these episodes can feel unpredictable. They can be severe, involve suicidal thoughts, or require hospitalization. People think that hypomania or mania is our biggest symptom, but this is not actually the symptom we experience most. We spend 3 times as much time feeling depressed as we do feeling manic. And if you have bipolar 2, this can be even worse. People with bipolar 2 can spend up to 40 times more time feeling depressed than they do feeling hypomanic. Our depression episodes aren't always short, and they can go on for long periods of time. We can also have depression symptoms in between episodes. This is because many of us experience depression symptoms that aren't quite severe enough to be considered a depressive episode, but they're bad enough to cause low mood and energy and affect our quality of life. The fact that our depression episodes are recurring is part of what makes them hard to deal with. I used to refer to my depression episodes as the black hole because it felt like it just swallowed you up and you were never going to escape from it. For me, the hardest part wasn't the depression itself. It was that I had fallen into the black hole again. And it felt like there was always going to be another depression episode. The recurring nature of our episodes is part of the disorder, so there may always be another episode. But understanding this is the key to managing bipolar disorder. The more you understand the disorder, the easier it is for you to manage it and deal with it. Now let's talk about how bipolar depression is treated, because it's not treated the same way as major depression. Even though the symptoms may look the same, what's going on inside our brains is different. This is why we respond differently to medications. And because many of us don't seek out treatment when we're hypomanic or manic, we are often misdiagnosed at first. And this can be a problem because this means we will not get on the right medication. If you have major depression, they will usually prescribe an antidepressant. But if you have bipolar disorder, antidepressants can trigger hypomania, mania, or mixed episodes. So they usually use these very cautiously in people who have a bipolar diagnosis. Instead, we are usually started on a mood stabilizer like lithium, Depakote, or Lamictal. Mood stabilizers don't work like antidepressants. They stabilize our moods, which reduces the mania. This keeps us from crashing so hard during our depressive episodes. But they also reduce depression symptoms, but not in the same way as antidepressants. Lithium is known to reduce our risk of suicide, and lamictal is generally better at treating the depression side of bipolar disorder. But they also use atypical antipsychotics to treat bipolar depression. This is usually used as an add-on treatment if the mood stabilizers aren't doing enough. Some of the antipsychotics they use, like Seroquel and Vraylar, help treat both mania and depression. Others, like Latuda and Caplyta, are used more specifically to treat bipolar depression. Sometimes they will use medications like Symbyax. Symbyax is olanzapine and fluoxetine combined. So olanzapine is an antipsychotic and fluoxetine is an antidepressant. So sometimes they will combine the two if the person has treatment-resistant bipolar depression and they've tried other things. Sometimes the combination of the antidepressant with an antipsychotic can help. If you have bipolar 2, they might prescribe an antidepressant with a mood stabilizer, but they usually won't prescribe an antidepressant on its own. It's paired with a mood stabilizer. So another important part of treatment for bipolar depression is therapy. Not every depressive episode or depressive symptom we have is caused by the disorder itself. Sometimes we have trauma, situations in our life, or other things that are exaggerating the depression, and having a therapist to talk to about it, to work on a plan, and have support for managing your depression and coping with it can be just as important as taking your medications. So another thing that is really important when you're managing your bipolar disorder, especially the bipolar depression, is your lifestyle. So you can't be not getting any sleep, eating terribly, have a stressful home environment, and expect to keep your moods balanced. So these things are important as well. Some things I try to do is make sure I get enough sleep every night and kind of aim to keep that consistent. Life doesn't always work that way, but I try. Exercise, eating a healthy diet, and having healthy relationships. And that was something that was hard for me to learn, but having healthy relationships really makes a difference when you're trying to manage bipolar disorder. But even when we're doing everything we can to manage our bipolar disorder, we can still struggle with depression. Bipolar depression is actually the hardest symptom to treat. Many of us can't take antidepressants, especially if we have bipolar 1, and the atypical antipsychotics don't work for everyone. Up to 33% of us have treatment-resistant bipolar depression. So, if the ups are managed away and the downs are not, that can leave us feeling hopeless and depressed because these depression episodes are so disabling and persistent. What can you do if you're depressed and feel like nothing is working? When we're in a severe depression, many of us will try anything to get out of this depression. One of the things many of us do is we try to trigger a hypomanic or manic episode. This is actually pretty common, and it can make our symptoms even harder to manage. I found one study that looked at online discussions from people who had bipolar disorder who tried to self-induce mania. And what they found was that around 3/4 of these people said that they tried to self-induce mania to get out of a depression episode. So, with that in mind, do not stop taking your meds. You need to always consult a doctor before you stop or wean off any of your medications. Yes, stopping your meds may kick you into a manic or hypomanic episode, but you won't stay manic forever, and when you come down from this, the depression may be worse than the depression you were in to start off with. You also don't want to try other things to trigger a hypomanic or manic episode for the same reasons you don't want to stop taking your meds. Trying to trigger a manic episode doesn't always work the way you want it to. Sometimes it can make the depression even worse, or it can put you into an manic or hypomanic episode that you can't control. One of the things I've learned over the years is how our disorder works. Our mood changes come in episodes, so these episodes don't last forever. Yes, they're recurring, but for me, knowing that these episodes eventually come to an end helps me. I've also come to understand that this is a lifelong disorder. And that was the hardest part for me to deal with. But once I came to terms with this, it actually helped me to manage it better. Sometimes the depression episodes feel more intense when they're back again. It's exhausting when you finally had your last episode and now you're having another one. That is the part that I have learned to accept, that there may always be another one. Once I stopped expecting my bipolar disorder to just go away because I took my meds and did everything right, it became easier for me to deal with. But acceptance isn't the only thing. If you start noticing that you're slipping into a depression or a hypomanic or manic episode, call your doctor. It may be time for a medication adjustment, or it may be just time for another discussion with your doctor. Find a therapist and have a support system. You may not need a therapist for the entire course of your life, but therapists can help you when medication issues aren't what's the problem, when you have circumstances in your life that are contributing to your bipolar disorder and to your depression. Having somebody to talk to is incredibly helpful. And there is something else you can try, but I definitely want you to talk to your doctor before you do this, because it could trigger hypomania or mania. So I read some research several years ago when I was struggling with really severe depression and couldn't get out of it. And I found an article about doctors using sleep modification to help a patient get out of a refractory depression. So they had tried everything, including ECT, medications, and inpatient hospitalization. And then they decided to try something unusual. So we all know that sleep deprivation can kick us into a hypomanic or manic episode, but it can also help to reset our circadian rhythm and sometimes reset our mood. So they tried a specific sleep modification technique that went on over 4 or 5 days that helped to kick the patient out of this depression, and nothing had worked, and this was the first thing they had tried that worked. So I have a video about this sleep modification. It's called My Sleep Hack for Bipolar Depression, and I also have a blog post about it where I link to the actual discussion and article on this. So I'm going to put that in the description, and you can also check out this video as well. But I use this technique sometimes when I'm stuck in a depression. It doesn't work every time, but it does work quite a bit. So it's something I wanted to tell you guys about. Now I'm going to talk about a few specialized treatments. The first one is the ketogenic diet. I've been following the ketogenic diet for 8 years, and it's made an enormous difference in my life and in managing my bipolar disorder. But it is definitely not a cure for me. Still, it is an emerging treatment, and you can find doctors that use metabolic treatments for bipolar disorder. If you want to find out more about that, you can go to metabolicmind.org, and they have a form you can fill out to find out how to get started and how to find doctors who will help you to use this as part of your bipolar treatment. This isn't something you want to do by yourself, because the ketogenic diet can interact with other medications, and it may require medical supervision when you get started. When I started, I had a lot of lab work done to make sure that my electrolytes and my lithium levels and things like that weren't being affected. So this isn't something you want to do without the care of a doctor. Another treatment is called TMS, or transcranial magnetic stimulation. And this is a non-invasive treatment that uses magnetic pulses to stimulate parts of the brain that are involved in mood regulation. So it's not a medication, and it shouldn't be something that interferes with your medication treatment. I did see a psychiatrist for a while that I really loved that used this treatment. It wasn't something I ever personally tried, but they use it a lot for unipolar depression, and they sometimes use it for treatment-resistant bipolar depression as an add-on treatment. Another treatment option I want to mention is ECT. I debated on whether or not I wanted to include this treatment, because I've always thought of it as a last resort or extreme treatment for bipolar disorder. I remember seeing people going for ECT treatment when I was inpatient many, many years ago, and I didn't realize we were still using this. This is not a first line or even second line option for most people, but in extreme cases, it has been shown to be extremely effective. Today's ECT is much gentler. It's done under anesthesia in a medical setting. Even if you're doing everything right, you might still struggle with depression. People who don't have bipolar disorder may not ever really understand how hard bipolar depression is. It takes more than just taking medication and getting rid of the crash. We often have depression a lot, and it's very difficult to treat. I hope you found this video helpful. If you liked it, please click the like button and, of course, subscribe. I'll have another video for you guys again real soon.